the Rebels. Ole Miss and Mercer, season opener on Saturday in Oxford. Alongside Michael Borky and Brian Haydad, I'm Richard Cross. The C Spire text line is open to you at 601-879-4395. Give your business the edge with gigabit fiber internet from C Spire Business, cspire.com/business. So before we dive into the numbers and really kind of unpack things, give me a high-level thought about this game. 73-7, Ole Miss did what they needed to do, what they were supposed to do. What stood out to you?
Maybe it shouldn't have stood out because it's what we all expected and we have since April. But for all the public charade that Kiffin did with quarterbacks and we're not sure, it was Jackson Dart's team. And now he took the oar off the depth chart today, named him the starter today, but he didn't even try to create an illusion even on Saturday in a game that had, it was never in doubt, even after the first play for Mercer. The game was never in doubt. Everybody knew that. Didn't even bother, throwing Sanders in for the third drive just to mess with people. No. He, despite what he said publicly, through spring, summer, and fall, it has been Jackson Dart's football team. And in a throwaway game, he didn't even bother trying to make you think anything other than that. And he performed well. It's Mercer. That caveat needs to belong in all of this conversation. It's just Mercer. But he looked exactly how you would hope that he would look against an opponent like that. And the snap distribution was that of there's no competition, there's no anything. It is Jackson Dart's football team. Full stop. Final. Done.
Hey, Dad, any thoughts from you?
I didn't get to see a lot of this game. I saw most of the first half, I guess. And obviously, Mercer scoring on the first play, I'm sure people were looking around. So let's give Pete Golding a lot of credit there for just shaking that completely off and putting together his unit put together a pretty dominant performance from that play on.
Lane Kiffin had jokes about that after the game.
That was really funny.
I bet he did.
Not surprising. Said he said over the headset, "Hey Pete, we're not paying you this much money to give up 75 yards on the first play from scrimmage. Think we might can shape that up a little bit?" I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
I'm sure he was too.
Yeah, a couple of things that stood out. Jackson Dart started 11 for 11, and it was not a bunch of swing passes and quick slants. He threw the ball down the field. Looked like he was driving the ball pretty well. Pretty good touch on the deep ball. 334 yards, 4 touchdowns. He played, 2.5, 3 quarters in the game.
Yeah.
He was really in control. The other thing, though, Trey Harris, the Louisiana Tech transfer, making his Ole Miss debut, he was targeted 9 times. He had 6 catches for 133 yards and 4 touchdowns. 3 of those touchdowns came in the first 3.5 minutes of the game. He added a 4th touchdown later in the ball game and set a single-game touchdown receiving record for Ole Miss. They've been playing football for a long time. Nobody had ever caught 4 touchdowns in a football game before. Spencer Sanders played pretty well. He was 8 of 14 for 134 yards with a couple of touchdown passes. Walker Howard played in the fourth quarter, 3 of 4 for 56 yards, including a 29-yard pass in there. Ole Miss got good production from the quarterback room. Talked all offseason about the fact that it's a really deep quarterback room, and they had 3 quarterbacks that played well in the opportunities that they were given. Quinshon Judkins goes 13 carries for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, they were not loading up on Quinshon Judkins. Clearly. There's no need to. This is a guy that you want to pick your spots because there are going to be some games where you really have to ride him and have him carry a big load. Saturday was not one of those days, but I thought you got the first glimpse of what Quinshon Judkins is going to see a lot, and that is really focusing on limiting his ability to make big runs and big plays. That goes hand in hand with the passing game, though, right?
Mm-hmm. Teams, for however long, are going to dare Dart to beat them. Okay, yeah. You got to pick one, and again, it's Mercer. Dart did, especially those 30-yard back shoulder throws, looked really comfortable throwing them, had a lot of confidence in that. And at no point, even against the bad teams a year ago, did he show that. But it's probably very easy as a quarterback to throw the football to guys that you know are going to be open and behind an offensive line that you know is not going to let anybody hit you because it's Mercer. So we'll see if that's actually what he has become versus what he looked like against Mercer. But yeah, I think you got a glimpse of that. I think Tulane's going to do the same thing. They're going to dare Dart to beat them. And Georgia Tech's going to dare Dart to beat them until he does it consistently moving forward, and then they have to adjust. But yeah, I suspect Tulane to try to make Judkins' day on Saturday really difficult. And if Dart beats him, Dart beats him. But they're not going to let Quinshon do it.
That would be the smart game plan, for sure.
If you're Tulane?
And you should never – every game plan should be don't let the best guy beat you. If other guys step up and beat you, that's just football. But, if you lose because Quinshon Judkins had, 17 carries for 184 yards and 4 touchdowns, well, that's probably on you for not having a good enough plan to stop it.
Is there a best-case scenario for Ole Miss coming up this week against Tulane where Tulane stacks the box early to try and limit Quinshon Judkins? Jackson Dart is really good throwing the football. Ole Miss has some success. Tulane makes an adjustment to that at halftime, and then Ole Miss just comes back and turns it into the Quinshon Judkins show in the second half?
That is the best case scenario. You just outlined it. Dart, and that would be great for Dart to have a game where he's against a good team on the road, where he's just throwing pills and they're catching them and he's getting touchdowns. That can go a long way for him.
Suntarian Perkins played a lot of snaps, and I think that was by design because you didn't have all of the defensive guys play the same number of snaps that Suntarian Perkins did. They're trying to figure out what they've got here, and it was a great get-your-feet-wet game for him. 9 total tackles, 1 sack, had a pass breakup. He certainly looks the part. There's a whole speed of the game thing and what are you going to be able to get out of him in big moments thing. I think you're just going to learn with him on the field, though, right? He has to play.
He has to play. And defensively – and a lot of teams did this. Some of them didn't have that luxury, though. I mean, even Georgia at first kind of struggled with their FCS opponent. They rotated defensively a lot. What was it, 4 players? I think 4 players played more than half of the snaps defensively. I think it's only 4, maybe even less. But very few guys were in very often. A lot of young guys played that. And so, honestly, do we even know what a Pete Golding defense is going to look like yet? I mean, in terms of personnel and even what they do, because again, it was Mercer. They could mess around with lineups, and they could have a different pair of linebackers in on every single series, and they could play a bunch of young guys on the defensive line and trial those combinations because there was no fear whatsoever of losing. I had a friend ask me, should I be concerned about them on defense? And I said, they had 93 rushing yards, did Mercer. 75 of those came on 1 play. I can't answer that question. On top of the fact that, again, there's just so much rotation and all that, I don't even know who they think they're going to depend on because they didn't have to depend on anybody on Saturday.
Yeah. Special teams pretty good. Caden Costa returns as the place kicker. Jordan Watkins has a 70-yard punt return. Ole Miss, what was that I heard? Ole Miss had not had a punt return since
2013.
Was it 2013?
I believe it was 2013, and if I remember correctly, because they didn't say it on the broadcast. Jeff Scott in Austin
against Texas. Yeah. When they said it was Jeff Scott and it was 2013, I was trying to think. I was like, it's got to be that game against Texas. That was when David Kellum had what I think was one of his best all-time calls, where he finished it with carry him into the end zone, boys, because he had like a convoy of white jerseys leading him. It was almost like a little force field around him as he was returning that one. Crowd, look, I wasn't there, obviously. I thought the student section looked great early. I mean, nobody was staying for the second half of that game. It looked like the west side was pretty good. The east side was pretty spotty. I don't know how many. I wasn't there, so I can't do this is how many people were there.
I got some pictures, and for Mercer, I thought it was better than I expected.
Yeah. They announced 60,000, probably 50 or so thousand at the game. Whatever.
Something like that.
Anyway, that's Ole Miss 73-7 over Mercer in the season opener. Bunch of different guys carried the football. A lot of different guys had catches in the game, including Michael Trigg, who had 3 catches for 44 yards, and
now that Wolf is hurt,
might should have had a touchdown catch as well. I don't know if he catches that ball if he goes for it with 2 hands, but just throwing one left hand out there, I don't know.